Can you get PTSD from watching movies? I think I might have it. Thank God it's over. I don't know who you pray to, but thanks for praying to him. I made it. 2023, you had promise. What happened? Who hurt you? I'm all ears. Especially now since my eyes don't work. You'll notice that I'm here again by myself. These movies killed the old man. I'm not sure which one it happened in. I'm not sure where his soul departed his body, existentially speaking or metaphysically speaking, but I know that over the course of one of these 7 films, the Grim Reaper came and took him. I'm sorry, I just need a minute. Excuse me. Where am I? All of a sudden, I was in a bright room, and I saw my childhood cat Fish Sticks. And Grandma. I love you, Grandma. But was it a dream? I think I may have passed on. I think I'm a Ghost Paul. These movies can no longer hurt me. Ghost Paul. Ghost Paul. Welcome back, Internet. This is the Desert Island Institute of Film. I am Ghost Paul, your host with the most. Welcome back to the astonishing, the wonderful, the astounding Desert Island Institute of Film. Dr. Paul sent that on assignment again. He's at the North Pole. He'll be back on the 25th. But with 2023 coming close to an end, I thought, what better time to go through the most remarkably bad movies that came out this year. We'll worry about 2024 when 2024 gets here. There was so much promise going into this year. I had such high hopes for movies that were going to be awesome. The horror genre was going to be uplifted to unimaginable heights. My Borderlands movie was finally going to come out. I mean, it was looking good, man. It was looking good. Et tu, Brute. But that's enough chit-chat. It's time to get down to the nitty-gritty. So put your tray tables in their upright position, do 5 Hail Marys, then put your head between your legs and kiss your ass goodbye. Sayonara sanity, hello hysteria. It's time for the top 7 worst movies of 2023.
Kill me now, oh, kill me now.
2023 was supposed to be the year that our beloved film industry would finally right the ship and reach homeostasis once again. But unfortunately, the tastemakers in Hollywood didn't get the memo. Instead, studios leaned into their greed like never before, making puzzling decision after puzzling decision. Rather than focusing on bringing rich stories to life, the white-collar power brokers that be instead spent all their time and effort pushing radical ideologies and holier-than-thou morality. This led to an incursion of incompetent sequels and directionless reimaginings of once revered franchises. Indiana Jones, Transformers, The Exorcist, and even the mighty MCU were all targets in their own right, having fallen flat on their faces in 2023. But I digest. There were some absolute gems released this year. When Evil Lurks, Godzilla Minus One, Oppenheimer, The Killers of Flower Moon, genuine modern classics. But discussing these films might lead to a modicum of enjoyment, and I'm nothing if not a glutton for punishment, so I figured I would lean heavily into what little skill I have and bring you the absolute worst movies of 2023. Screw originality, taking time to skillfully craft a story is for the birds, and after some behind-the-scenes strong-arming by Disney and Bob Iger, or as I like to refer to him, studios collectively decided to bail on 2023 being the year of the rabbit, and instead hailed it the year of the suckle. Number 7. Transformers Rise of the Beasts. Released June 9th, 2023, Transformers Rise of the Beast was part of the summer onslaught that left many audience members bleeding profusely from the eyeballs. Paramount Pictures threw what amounts to $200 million into a dumpster fire that grossed just $157.1 million in the US and Canada, becoming the lowest grossing installment of the live-action franchise. The harsh reality is that it doesn't matter what the ratings or reviewers say. As long as it makes a decent hit at the box office, studios will continue to play trash farm and turn out cookie-cutter product-placed schlockfests. And just like its predecessors, Transformers Rise of the Beast follows the same school of thought, one that makes very little actual sense. And despite getting his can handed to him for large portions of the film, Optimus and co. out of nowhere defeat the foe rather easily. The one ray of hope comes in the form of flesh and blood lead Anthony Ramos, and it's no wonder why they're pinning the future hopes of the franchise on his acting skills. Unfortunately, it's nowhere near enough to warrant any subsequent installments, let alone watching this piece of crap in its entirety. There isn't much here in the way of redeeming qualities. Mediocre cinematography, stale special effects, unoriginal set pieces, and worst of all, an ending so predictable it comes and goes without much fanfare. Transformers Rise of the Beast has an audience score of 91% on Rotten Tomatoes, with a critic score of 52%. It also has a 6.1 out of 10 on IMDb, while here at the Desert Island Institute of Film, it scored a 5.4 out of 10. Number 6. 65. Released in the first quarter of 2023 on March 10th, 65 is one of the few entries on this list that isn't a sequel or part of a franchise. But let's be frank, it's basically a stepbrother or cousin. Think Jurassic Park in space. Produced on a paltry budget of only $45 million, it grossed just $60 million worldwide. It stars the ever-gloomy emo kid extraordinaire Adam Driver, who embarks on a deep space mission in order to earn money to treat his daughter Nevin's illness. The daughter Nevin, played by Chloe Coleman, who you'll get to know a little better later in this list. Hint, hint. Cough, cough. Anywho, as it tends to happen, Adam Driver's ship is hit by an asteroid, causing it to crash land in Richard Attenborough's backyard. A planet inhabited by the most generic dinosaurs ever. They have no discernible features outside of resembling the abomination that is Roland Emmerich's Godzilla. 65 is a film that lacks clarity and originality. A ripoff of any standard monster movie, but with a predictable Planet of the Apes style implication that audiences see from a solar system away. The only thing that could have saved this seance of suck is if Adam Driver was piloting a global killer-size asteroid that collides with the alien planet, destroying it Michael Bay style. Or lightsabers. And while that's simply not the reality, a girl can dream, can't she? 65 currently has an audience score of 65% on Rotten Tomatoes, with a critic score of 34%. While on IMDb, it received a 5.4 out of 10. Here at the Desert Island Institute of Film, it received a 5.2 out of 10. Number 5. Dungeons & Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. Now I'll be the first to admit that this one's going to piss off a lot of people. And while there were a few films I rated lower than Dungeons & Dragons, no theater experience in all of 2023 left me with a worse taste in my mouth. Released worldwide on March 31st, it received good marks from the majority of critics and audience members, but was considered a box office flop as it barely hit the break-even point with its $150 million budget. And while it's had undeniable success critically, and decent visuals, the story and believability is where Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves falls flat on its face. Or more aptly, it fell from the stupid tree and hit every branch on the way down. Flashy visuals and over-the-top set pieces do nothing to mask a story that at its core makes no f***ing sense. Seriously, it makes 0 sense. The entire point of the story was for Chris Pine and his daughter Kira, I told you we'd meet again, to find a magic tablet that could bring back his wife from the dead, restoring their family to live happily ever after. Wrong! After acquiring the tablet and defeating the cookie-cutter bad guys, Chris Pine instead saves the life of one of their fellow companions, Michelle Rodriguez as Holga. I guess I could have stomached this if the logic behind the choice wasn't,
Family! Family! Guys, that was a signal!
where's Vin Diesel when you need him? If you want to recreate the torturous punishments akin to experiencing this shit sandwich, you could instead spend the entire 2-hour and 14-minute runtime crawling through broken glass. Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves pandered its way to an audience score of 93% on Rotten Tomatoes, with a critic score of 91%. It also received a 7.3 out of 10 on IMDb, while here at the Desert Island Institute of Film it scored a 5.7 out of 10. Number 4. Meg 2. Another entry in the summer of Suckles is Meg 2 The Trench, released on August 4th of this year to the box office tune of $395 million, on a budget of somewhere between $129 and $139 million. The cast is headed by Jason Statham, a once revered indie movie star who has gotten away from his classic roots in films such as Snatch or Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, fully embracing the Liam Neeson phase of his career. The rest of the ancillary characters are somehow worse than the first film, as the supporting cast fully embrace the shallow, stereotypical characters that are at best cringeworthy. Throwing a gaudy number of giant sharks and other prehistoric creatures couldn't save a historically bland summer blockbuster, if you could even begin to call it that. Meg 2 The Trench is a film that lacks any real identity, not knowing if it's a horror film a la Jaws, a sci-fi creature feature in the vein of Moby Dick, or over-the-top gore-filled camp fests like Sharknado. Instead, it's the film equivalent of a small child banging 2 action figures together like chips of flint over firewood. Meg 2 The Trench currently has an audience score of 73% on Rotten Tomatoes, with a critic score of 27%. On IMDb, it received a 5 out of 10, while here at the Desert Island Institute of Film, it scored a 5.3 out of 10. Number 3. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. If the Academy decided to give out an award annually for the most disorganized, soulless labyrinth of dreck, that which embodies the spirit of films like Justice League, then Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania would win this year hands down. It's always a good sign when a film's release is pushed back multiple times. It's a great way to instill faith in your potential viewers. Now, there is so much to dislike about the third installment of the Ant-Man franchise, and despite my deep appreciation for Paul Rudd, the Ant-Man leg of the MCU is and has been one of my least favorite. I found the first 2 films to be boring, insipid, and all around unnecessary, but that's for a whole nother video unto itself. Quantumania fails resoundingly as both a standalone film and as part of a larger trilogy. No amount of cheeky lines from Jonathan Majors or Paul Rudd could begin to conceal the flaws present for most of the 124-minute runtime. Defects in the film's pacing, clarity, visual consistency, and worst of all, special effects, leave the viewer wanting. I can genuinely say that the only part of this film that I found even remotely watchable were those scenes involving Corey Stoll as MODOK. And let's be honest, his inclusion in the film is completely superfluous to the advancement of the story itself, and has been for most of the MCU's recently released projects. If this is a sign of things to come, fans should see it as a bad omen. Propping up the next decade of MCU films around a central antagonist that failed so spectacularly on a small scale simply doesn't make sense from a sales perspective. Currently, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania has an audience score of 82% on Rotten Tomatoes and a critic score of 46%. On IMDb, it received a 6.1 out of 10, while here at the Desert Island Institute of Film, it scored a 4.5 out of 10.
Back to howling all out in the woods.
Number 2. Hypnotic. The last entry on this list that isn't a sequel released May 12th on a budget of $65 million. And while it's technically not a sequel, it is the continuation of writer-director Robert Rodriguez releasing total shit. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Gone are the days of Desperado and From Dusk Till Dawn, now replaced by Spy Kids 5 and We Can Be Heroes. I'd be lying if I said that the premise for Hypnotic didn't sound promising. A police detective dealing with the kidnapping and loss of his daughter gets caught in the middle of government-trained hypnotists that control people's minds. But that's about where the positives stop for this one. Hypnotic is one of those films that come along that's so undeniably bad that it borderlines on being good. This might just be Robert Rodriguez's worst writing job. The dialogue is laughably bad, especially during one of the many countless scenes involving exposition required to advance the story. It's almost as if someone programmed a very basic AI to write stories about the human experience, and it spat out Hypnotic. The cast members' actions are all out of character and seem stiff or forced. It all just feels very unnatural. No wonder it made a laughable $15.7 million at the box office, less than a quarter of its budget. The only redeeming quality Hypnotic has is its 94-minute runtime, so if you're a glutton for punishment, it only lasts an hour and a half. Currently, it has an audience score of 62% on Rotten Tomatoes, with a critic score of 32%. On IMDb, it received a 5.5 out of 10, while on the Desert Island Institute of Film, it scored a 4.1 out of 10. Number 1. Expendables. The film equivalent of Giving Birth was released worldwide on September 22nd with a budget of $100 million. Now, just for a smidgen of context, I saw the first Expendables, and though I thoroughly enjoyed it, I haven't revisited the franchise since. Not because I avoided the second and third installments. Wink wink. Leaving a lack of connective tissue to the more endearing aspects of this story, if you can call it that. But it felt like someone was putting lipstick on a pig and presenting it as the most beautiful woman alive, much in the way that Megan Fox plastered the face of a much younger woman on top of her own. Not a good start for director Scott Waugh. More like Scott, what are you doing, you Moran? I would have turned off this shit show mid-first act if I hadn't looked into my crystal ball to see it end up at the precipice of the truly torturous, like some sort of cut-rate Nostradamus. You mean Nostradamus. I mean, just watch former World's Strongest Man try to muscle his way through this acting masterclass. Sorry, Eddie, normally I love your work. The lack of access to A-list action stars once gracing this cult favorite seem more like the Great Lakes Avengers than the badass Terminators of old. I mean, since when did Caitlyn Jenner take over leading the team for Sly Stallone? And what off-their-rocker, out-of-their-meds costume designer decided to dress up the Dolph Lundgren like a cut-rate Joe Perry impersonator? Last time I checked, Aerosmith was retiring. I guess old habits do die hard. This film amounts to nothing more than a 104-minute trip to the bright flashing lights and explosive sounds of Michael Bay's planetary laser show, at least until Dark Side of the Moon takes back over. Watching UFC Hall of Famer Randy Couture mushmouth his way through dialogue is akin to watching James Toney fight off his back while getting taken behind the shed and beaten like a tied-up goat. In short, should anyone in their right mind attempt to slog their way through this shit heap?
No, I'm saving your dumb ass.
Well, you heard it not from the mouth of babes, but from the lead man himself. If you do decide to commit movie suicide, just make sure to keep your defibrillator on deck Casino Royale style. Currently, Expendables has an audience score of 71% on Rotten Tomatoes, with a critic score of 14%. On IMDb, it received a 4.8 out of 10, while here at the Desert Island Institute of Film, it scored an astoundingly low 3.9 out of 10. If you have any comments or suggestions for our show, or would like to be on an episode, you can contact us at the address on your screen, and we will see you guys next time at the movies.